You know, when you read ancient texts, sometimes you stumble across rules that just seem, well, bizarre, right? Well, today we're going to dive into one of those, a set of laws from the book of Leviticus all about being ritually unclean. It might sound a little strange at first, but you're going to see there's a fascinating, consistent logic to it all. Let's decode this together.
And that really brings us to the big question, what in the world did it actually mean to be unclean? Because look, if we get this part wrong, if we think it's about being sinful or just, physically dirty, we're going to misunderstand the entire system. Nailing this down is basically the key to unlocking this whole ancient code. Okay, so this is probably the single most important thing to get straight. We are not talking about being physically dirty here. And it's definitely not about being sinful. Ritual uncleanness was a temporary status. A better way to think about it is, it's like being temporarily incompatible with the sacred. Kind of like trying to push the same poles of two magnets together, It just creates this separation that keeps you from entering a holy space, like the tabernacle.
All right, so here's the game plan. We'll dig into what this uncleanness really is. We'll look at the specific laws for men, then the laws for women. We'll see how someone got cleansed, and then we'll get to the big why behind this entire system.
Okay, so let's start with the laws concerning men. And the text is super specific here, focusing on things like bodily emissions and a particular condition it calls a running issue. And it's really worth remembering all of this comes straight from the source text, Leviticus chapter 15. And as you'll see, these rules were laid out with just an incredible amount of detail.
So what's really fascinating here is how this state of uncleanness wasn't just contained to the person. It kind of radiated outward. You see it right here. The bed they lie on, whatever they sit on, all of it becomes unclean too. It's like these objects become carriers, able to pass that status along to anyone else who touches them.
So you can start to see this really clear logic emerging. Uncleanness could spread through direct contact, sure, but also indirectly through objects. And check out how incredibly detailed this gets. The idea was that a porous clay pot could absorb the impurity, so it had to be broken. But a wooden vessel, that could just be rinsed off and it was good to go. I mean, they thought of everything.
All right, so now we're going to see how these very same principles, this whole system of purity and contamination, were also applied to women, with the laws mostly centered around menstruation and other discharges.
And right away, you start to see the same patterns, don't you? You've got that set period of separation, 7 days. The uncleanness transfers to things like her bed, and anyone who comes into contact has to go wash up. It just goes to show how incredibly consistent the internal logic of this whole system really was.
And the system was flexible enough to account for unusual situations too. So if a woman had a prolonged issue, the rules didn't change. They just extended for as long as the issue lasted. See? The principle remained exactly the same no matter what.
So, okay, if you became ritually unclean, was that it? Were you just stuck that way? No, not at all. There was a super clear step-by-step path back to being ritually pure. And a huge part of that process was this number right here, 7. After the physical issue itself stopped, you still had to wait a full 7 days before you could even start the final steps. This number just pops up over and over again in the text. It's always this signal of completion, of waiting for a cycle to finish.
And the actual ritual for purification was pretty straightforward. So, after your 7 days were up, you'd wash your clothes, you'd bathe your whole body in what the text calls running water, which basically means fresh water, not stagnant. And then the final step was to bring a specific offering to the priest, who would make atonement for you. And boom, you were back. Your ritual purity was restored.
All right, so that brings us to the biggest question of them all, doesn't it? Why? Why go through all of this? What was the point of this entire incredibly detailed system of clean and unclean, of separation and washing?
Well, what's great is that the text itself doesn't actually leave us guessing, because right there, tucked away near the end of the chapter in verse 31, it gives us the explicit reason for every single rule we've just talked about.
And here it is, plain and simple. Thus shall ye separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness. And why? So, and I quote, that they die not when they defile my tabernacle that is among them. Wow. I mean, that's the whole mission statement right there.
So let's break that down. The absolute crucial point is this. All of these rules, every single one, were designed to protect the sanctity of the tabernacle, the holy space where God's presence was believed to dwell. It wasn't about being dirty. It was about spiritual safety, creating a clear boundary to make sure that sacred space wasn't accidentally defiled. And that really leaves us with something to chew on, doesn't it? When you think about it, this ancient world was built on these sharp distinctions, clean and unclean, sacred and common. And it really makes you wonder,
How do these ancient ideas about creating boundaries and protecting sacredness, how do they still echo in our modern concepts of community and what we hold sacred today?